Zxylorp the Magnificent, first tentacle of the Galactic Council and keeper of infinite wisdom, was having a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day, and it was all because of those pesky humans and their infernal homework. Now, you might be wondering, what could possibly ruffle the tentacles of such an exalted being? Well, grab a seat. Pour yourself a nice tall glass of hydrochloric acid or whatever your species considers a refreshing beverage, and let me tell you a tale that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about the universe. And homework. Especially homework. It all started when the humans, those walking, talking bundles of chaos from that backwater death world called Earth, finally managed to stumble their way into the galactic community. Of course, they did it in the most human way possible, by accidentally broadcasting every single episode of Friends into deep space. The Galactic Council is still debating whether this constitutes a war crime. Anyway, once the humans arrived on the scene, the Galactic Education Board decided it would be a fantastic idea to integrate them into the Universal University system. To promote cultural exchange and foster interspecies understanding and all that diplomatic gobbledygook that sounds great on paper but is an absolute nightmare to implement. Zixalor, being the poor, unfortunate soul in charge of academic affairs, was tasked with evaluating the human education system and finding ways to incorporate it into the galactic curricula. Simple enough, right? Wrong. Oh, so very, very wrong. You see, Zxylorp made the grave mistake of starting with human mathematics. How difficult could it be, he thought, his 7 brains pulsating with misplaced confidence. These primitives have only just figured out how to leave their own solar system without blowing themselves up. Their math must be child's play compared to our advanced quantum temporal calculus. And so, with the arrogance that can only come from being a multi-brained, tentacled being who's never had to worry about things like gravity or being squishy, Zxylorp decided to tackle a human high school math assignment. The problem seemed simple enough. If a train leaves Chicago at 3:00 p.m. traveling east at 60 miles per hour, and another train leaves New York at 4:30 p.m. traveling west at 70 miles per hour, at what time will they meet, assuming the distance between Chicago and New York is 800 miles? Zxylorp chuckled, all 23 of his mouths curling into smug smiles. He immediately set to work, his tentacles flying across his holo interface as he input the variables into the most powerful supercomputer in the known universe. 3 nanoseconds later, the computer spat out an answer. Error, insufficient data. Please provide information on gravitational fluctuations, solar wind patterns, and the quantum state of each individual atom in both trains. Zxylorp frowned. Clearly, there must be some mistake. He double-checked the problem, then triple-checked it. But no, the infuriating little question remained the same, mocking him with its apparent simplicity. Computer, Zxylorp gurgled imperiously. Surely you can calculate a simple meeting point between 2 objects moving in linear paths. The computer's response was as instant as it was infuriating: negative. The problem fails to account for the Coriolis effect, potential time dilation due to speed, or the possibility of interdimensional interference. Also, what's a Chicago? By this point, Zxylorp's tentacles were twisted into knots of frustration. He decided to consult with his colleagues. Surely they could shed some light on this baffling human brain teaser. First, he approached Dr. Bloop Bleep, the foremost expert on theoretical physics in the Andromeda Galaxy. Ah, yes, Dr. Bloop Bleep burbled after examining the problem, his gelatinous form jiggling with what passed for thoughtfulness in his species. I see the issue here. The humans have clearly oversimplified the problem to the point of absurdity. Where are the variables for dark matter distribution? How can we calculate anything without knowing the exact quantum state of every particle involved? And don't even get me started on the lack of consideration for potential wormhole interference. Zxylorp's hopes, much like his tentacles, deflated. He decided to try a different approach and waved over Professor Ziz, the university's leading mathematician. Professor Ziz's compound eyes scanned the problem, all 7,000 of them blinking in perfect synchronization. Fascinating, she buzzed, her antennae twitching with excitement. The humans appeared to be using some form of primitive linear algebra. How quaint. But I'm afraid I can't help you solve it. My expertise lies in 17-dimensional hypercube calculus. This is just too simple. Have you tried asking a larva? Zxylorp was beginning to feel a headache coming on in at least 3 of his brains. In desperation, he even consulted the hive mind of Rigel 7, a collective consciousness that spanned an entire star system. The response from the hive mind came back as a series of simiate pulses that roughly translated to LOL, nope. That's way too easy for us. We only deal with problems that involve calculating the heat death of at least 12 universes simultaneously. Have you tried, I don't know, actually doing the math yourself? That last suggestion hit Zxylorp like a blast from an ion cannon. Do the math himself, without relying on hyper-advanced technology or the collective knowledge of a million civilizations. The very idea was preposterous, absurd, utterly human. With a sinking feeling in all 7 of his stomachs, Zxylorp realized that he had no choice. He was going to have to think like a human. The horror of this realization cannot be overstated. It was as if a Zarblaxian slug beast had suddenly been asked to compose a sonnet, or a Vorlon had been challenged to a breakdancing compatibilization. But Zxylorp was nothing if not determined. He was also slimy, tentacled, and possessed of a rather unfortunate body odor. But that's neither here nor there. He took a deep breath through all 17 of his breathing orifices and decided to approach the problem step by step, just as a human might. First, he identified the known variables. Train A leaves Chicago at 3:00 p.m., traveling east at 60 miles per hour. Train B leaves New York at 4:30 p.m., traveling west at 70 miles per hour. The distance between Chicago and New York is 800 miles. Then he began to reason through the problem. Train B starts 1.5 hours after Train A. In that 1.5 hours, Train A will have traveled 60 mif x 1.5 hours 90 miles. So when Train B starts, the distance between them is 800 miles, 90 miles, 710 miles. Now we need to find out how long it will take for them to cover that 710 miles. The trains are moving towards each other, so we add their speeds, 60 mef, 70 mef, 130 mef. Time distance speed. Time 710 miles, 130 mef, 5.46 hours. Zxylorp's tentacles trembled as he reached the final step. 8. Train B left at 4:30 p.m., so 5.46 hours later would be approximately 9:58 p.m. There it was. An answer. A simple, elegant answer that required no knowledge of quantum mechanics, no understanding of hyperdimensional mathematics, and not a single calculation involving the gravitational constant of the universe. Zxylorp stared at his work, all 14 of his eyes wide with disbelief. Could it really be this? Straightforward. He quickly input the answer into the Galactic verification matrix, a device capable of confirming the accuracy of any calculation in the known universe. The machine hummed for a moment, then displayed a simple message, correct. Zxylorp fell backward, his tentacles splaying out in shock. He had done it. He had solved a human math problem, and he had done it without using a single shred of advanced alien technology. As the implications of this began to sink in, Zxylorp found himself experiencing a strange new sensation. It started in his lower left brain, spread to his central nervous column, and soon engulfed his entire being. It was a feeling of accomplishment? Pride? No, it was something even more alien to him. Fun. He had actually enjoyed solving the problem. Zxylorp's sudden burst of laughter startled a passing Zergonian diplomat, causing them to reflexively deploy their defensive spines and spray corrosive acid all over the hallway. But Zxylorp didn't care. He was too busy experiencing the unique joy of learning something new. As he collected himself and helped the janitor bot clean up the acid, Zxylorp realized that he had grossly underestimated these humans. Their approach to problem solving was unlike anything he had encountered in his centuries of academic pursuits. It was simple, yes, but also incredibly effective. They had developed ways to make complex calculations accessible, to break down seemingly insurmountable problems into manageable steps. And suddenly, the true genius of human education began to dawn on him. It wasn't about having all the answers or the most advanced technology. It was about learning how to think, how to approach problems creatively, and how to find solutions with limited resources. Filled with newfound respect and more than a little excitement, Zxylorp rushed back to his office. He had a report to write, recommendations to make, and an entire curriculum to revise. But first, he had one very important task to complete. He pulled up the human mathematics textbook and flipped to the next chapter, geometry. Ooh, he gurgled, his tentacles wriggling with anticipation. What's a triangle? Meanwhile, in a small classroom on Earth, Ms. Johnson's 9th grade math class was about to get a lot more interesting. All right, class Ms. Johnson said, her voice carrying that unique mix of enthusiasm and resigned acceptance that only high school teachers can achieve. Today we're going to try something a little different. The Galactic Education Board has asked us to incorporate some alien mathematics into our curriculum. So, instead of our usual algebra lesson, we're going to attempt to solve an equation provided by the Zyglobian Institute of Higher Learning. A collective groan rose from the students, punctuated by the dull thud of several foreheads hitting desks. Oh, come on, Ms. Johnson chided, trying to inject some enthusiasm into the room. It'll be fun. It's not every day we get to do alien math, right? Mims. Johnson piped up Billy from the back row, not bothering to lift his head from his desk. The last time we did fun math, I ended up in a 3-hour argument with my calculator. It still won't talk to me. A ripple of laughter spread through the classroom and Ms. Johnson had to bite back a smile. Well, Billy, I promise this won't involve any sentient calculators. Now, everyone please direct your attention to the board. With a flourish that would have made a magician proud, albeit a very nerdy magician, Ms. Johnson unveiled the problem. Given a hypercube in 11-dimensional space with a side length of 3 parsecs, Calculate the quantum fluctuation rate of its core assuming a background tachyon field density of 7.2 x 1023 particles per cubic light year and a localized chronoton interference pattern oscillating at 42 mHz. The classroom fell silent. So silent, in fact, that you could have heard a cork drop. Then, slowly, hesitantly, a hand rose into the air. It belonged to Sarah, the shy girl who usually sat in the corner doodling in her notebook. "Yes, Sarah," Ms. Johnson said, pleasantly surprised to see participation so quickly. Sarah began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is this a trick question?" Ms. Johnson blinked. "I don't think so. Why do you ask?" Sarah's cheeks flushed red, but she pressed on. "Well, it's just. The question assumes a stable tachyon field, right? But at that density, wouldn't the tachyons undergo spontaneous temporal inversion? And if that happens, the hypercube would exist in all 11 dimensions simultaneously, making the concept of a core kind of meaningless." Ms. Johnson's jaw dropped. The rest of the class swiveled in their seats to stare at Sarah, who seemed to be trying very hard to disappear into her chair. That is," Ms. Johnson stammered, completely out of her depth. She glanced down at the answer key provided by the Galactic Education Board. It simply read, 42. "Sarah," Ms. Johnson said slowly, "how do you know about tachyon field dynamics?" Sarah shrugged, somehow managing to look both embarrassed and a little proud. "I watch a lot of sci-fi." Before Ms. Johnson could respond, another hand shot up. This time it was Tommy, the class clown. "Yes, Tommy," Ms. Johnson said, bracing herself for whatever was coming. "Yeah, I think Sarah's onto something," Tommy said, shocking everyone including himself. But she forgot to account for the chronoton interference. At 42 mHz you get a resonance cascade with the hypercube's quantum harmonics. Wouldn't that cause a localized breakdown of causality? The class erupted into excited chatter. Suddenly, everyone had an opinion on hyperdimensional physics and quantum field theory. But what about the observer effect? Guys, we're forgetting about string theory. Has anyone considered the implications of loop quantum gravity? Miss Johnson stood at the front of the classroom, watching in amazement as her students excitedly debated concepts that would make most physicists' heads spin. She glanced back at the alien equation, then at her utterly useless answer key. With a shrug and a smile, she put down her chalk and pulled up a chair. "All right, class," she said, her voice filled with genuine curiosity. "Teach me." Back in the hallowed halls of the Galactic Council, Zxylorp was having the time of his life. Well, lives. He had 7 of them, thanks to a rather fortunate reincarnation clause in his species' biology. He had just finished presenting his findings on human mathematics to the council, and the reaction was mixed, to say the least. "Preposterous," bellowed Grognak the Destroyer, representative of the warmongering hordes of Epsilon Eridani. "You expect us to believe that these soft, squishy humans have developed a mathematical system that our greatest minds find challenging? Bah. Next, you'll be telling us they've weaponized something as ridiculous as dihydrogen monoxide." Zxylorp's tentacles wiggled in what might have been interpreted as a shrug. If anyone in the room had shoulders to reference. "I understand your skepticism, Grognak, but the facts are undeniable. Their approach to problem-solving is unique." "Unique," scoffed Jill Zilgzil of the Silicon Hive Collective. "That's a strange way to spell primitive. I calculated pi to its last digit before I developed sentience." Zxylorp countered, a smug tone entering his voice sack emissions. "But did you do it without using quantum computing? Did you derive it from first principles using nothing but a stick and some sand?" The council chamber fell silent as the implications of this sank in. It was High Counselor Zen of the ethereal plane who finally broke the silence. "Zxylorp," they whispered, their voice somehow managing to sound both everywhere and nowhere at once. "Are you suggesting that these humans, these descendants of tree-dwelling primates, have developed mental capabilities that rival our most advanced technologies?" Zxylorp's central eye blinked in affirmation. "Indeed, High Counselor, and not just rival. In some ways, surpass." The council exploded into chaos. Representatives from 1,000 worlds all began shouting at once, their various appendages gesticulating wildly. The council exploded into chaos. Representatives from 1,000 worlds all began shouting at once, their various appendages gesticulating wildly. It was a scene that would have made the average human political debate look like a particularly serene yoga session. "Order. I demand order," shouted Grand Arbiter X Zilvix, his crystalline form vibrating at a frequency that threatened to shatter every wine glass in a 5-parsec radius. Not that anyone could hear him over the din. Zxylorp watched the pandemonium with a mixture of amusement and exasperation. He'd expected some pushback, sure, but this was like telling a Vogan that someone had found a way to make poetry actually good. Unthinkable. Universe-shattering, even. Just as the Merglic delegation was about to release their infamous spores of discord, a biological weapon that induced an irresistible urge to argue about the merits of various types of moss, a small, unassuming figure cleared its throat. The sound shouldn't have been audible over the cacophony, and yet somehow it cut through the noise like a hot knife through quantum butter. All eyes, stalks, photoreceptors, and other assorted sensory organs turned towards the source of the sound. There, standing well, floating calmly in the center of the chamber, was Ambassador Plib of the hive mind of Rigel 7. Now, the thing about Plib was that he wasn't much to look at. Imagine, if you will, a sentient cloud of gas with delusions of a Moeba hood. But when Plib spoke, people listened, mostly because ignoring the collective voice of trillions of minds was generally considered a bad career move. Colleagues, Plib's voice resonated through the minds of everyone present. Perhaps we are approaching this situation from the wrong angle. A murmur of confusion rippled through the assembly. Explain yourself, Plib demanded High Counselor Zen, their ethereal form shimmering with curiosity. Plib's gaseous form swirled thoughtfully. We have long believed that technological advancement was the key to unlocking the mysteries of the universe. We've built computers the size of planets, harnessed the power of black holes, and even figured out how to fold space-time like it was cosmic origami. The assembled representatives nodded or performed whatever passed for nodding in their respective physiologies. And yet Plib continued, here we have a species that has achieved none of these things. A species that still thinks faster than light travel is a big deal. A species that gets excited about taking pictures of their own planet from space. Grobnak the destroyer snorted derisively. Your point, gasbag. If Plib was offended by the insult, he didn't show it. Then again, it's hard to read the expression of something that doesn't have a face. My point, dear Grobnak, is this. Despite their technological inferiority, these humans have developed problem-solving skills that rival or even surpass our own. They've done so not by building bigger computers or manipulating the fabric of reality, but by honing their minds. The council chamber fell silent as the implications of this sank in. It was a silence so profound that you could have heard a photon drop. Zxylorp, seizing the moment, floated forward. Ambassador Plib is correct. The humans have something we've long overlooked: creativity, imagination, the ability to think, well, outside the box, outside the hypercube, surely quipped a wag from the geometry-obsessed Euclidean collective. Zixalor ignored the interruption. Their mathematics, their science. It's not just about finding the right answer. It's about the journey to that answer. They've turned problem-solving into an art form. High Counselor Zen's ethereal form pulsed with interest. An art form, you say? Intriguing. But surely, Zxylorp, you're not suggesting we abandon our advanced technologies in favor of what? Thinking really hard. A ripple of laughter spread through the chamber, but Zxylorp remained unperturbed. Not at all, High Counselor. I'm suggesting we learn from the humans, combine their creative approach with our advanced technology. Imagine what we could achieve if we added human ingenuity to our vast knowledge. The council erupted into excited chatter once more, but this time it was thoughtful rather than chaotic. Ideas were being exchanged, possibilities considered. Even Grobnak the destroyer looked pensive, no doubt imagining how human creativity could be applied to the noble art of blowing things up. As the excitement grew, a small alert popped up on Zxylorp's personal holo display. It was a message from Ems Johnson's 9th grade class on Earth. Curious, he opened it. What he saw made all 7 of his hearts skip a beat. There, in neat, human handwriting, was a complete solution to the hypercube problem he had sent them. But it wasn't just a solution. It was an entirely new approach, one that elegantly sidestepped the need for massive quantum computers or reality warping technology. And at the bottom of the page was a simple note. Hope this helps. P.A.S. We have some questions about the nature of reality when you have a moment. Also, is it true that some aliens have math homework that involves actual black holes? Because that sounds awesome. Zxylorp couldn't help it. He burst out laughing, a sound that to human ears might have resembled a combination of a dolphin's clicks and a bullfrog's croak. The entire council turned to stare at him. My esteemed colleague, Zxylorp announced, his voice sack quivering with mirth, I believe I have just the thing to convince you of humanity's potential. And with that, he projected the student's solution for all to see. The reaction was immediate and profound. Gasps of astonishment echoed through the chamber. The quantum collective's representative fainted, overwhelmed by the elegance of the solution. Even Grobnak looked impressed, which was quite a feat considering his species communicated primarily through grunts and the occasional thermonuclear explosion. By the great singularity, whispered High Counselor Zen, their ethereal form flickering with excitement, they've done it. These humans have actually done it. They've found a way to make theoretical physics fun. As the implications of this sank in, a new mood swept through the Galactic Council. It was a mood of possibility, of potential. For the first time in eons, these advanced beings felt like students again, eager to learn, to explore, to discover. Zxylorp smiled with all 23 of his mouths. He had a feeling that the galaxy was about to enter a new age of discovery and innovation, an age where the combined creativity of humanity and the advanced technology of the galactic community would unlock mysteries they had never even thought to question. But first, he had a class of 9th graders to respond to. After all, if they wanted to discuss the nature of reality, who was he to disappoint them? As he began composing his reply, Zxylorp chuckled to himself. Who would have thought that the future of galactic science would be shaped by human homework? In the grand tapestry of the universe, it just went to show, never underestimate the power of a curious mind, no matter how primitive the species it belongs to might seem. Because sometimes the simplest questions lead to the most profound answers. And sometimes, just sometimes, those answers come from a bunch of teenagers who are just trying to avoid doing their actual homework. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor after all. Epilogue. Years later, as the first human-alien joint research teams made breakthrough after breakthrough, reshaping the very foundations of science as the galaxy knew it, a peculiar tradition arose in the halls of the Galactic Council. Whenever a particularly thorny problem presented itself, be it in physics, mathematics, or even galactic politics, someone would inevitably suggest, why don't we ask a human teenager? And more often than not, they did just that. As for Ms. Johnson's 9th grade class, well, let's just say their field trips got a lot more interesting. After all, why visit the local science museum when you can take a quick jaunt to study the event horizon of a black hole up close? Of course, this led to some rather unique parent-teacher conferences. Mrs. Smith, I'm afraid Billy was caught trying to create a wormhole in the gym again. On the bright side, he's made remarkable progress in his understanding of space-time curvature. And so the great cosmic dance continued, with humanity and alien kind learning from each other, challenging each other, and occasionally driving each other to the brink of insanity with increasingly bizarre homework assignments. Because in the end, isn't that what education is all about? Just don't ask about the time someone tried to teach Vogan poetry to the Silicon Hive Collective. Some scars, even for artificial intelligences, never quite heal. Or is it just the beginning? Cue dramatic music, lens flare, and a slow zoom out to reveal the entire galaxy, which, if you squint hard enough, kind of looks like a giant question mark. Or maybe it's just time to clean the space windshield again.